This video is a bit of a jargon buster, just touching on a process called Six Sigma, which you may have heard of, you may have come across, you may have an idea what it is, you may know what it is, you may not. But I thought I'd just run a very short video just to explain what it is, so you're aware of it. And it's a kind of lean tool that we use, that organizations use, and it's a tool used to minimize defects in a process. We talked about 7 wastes. One of the wastes is defects. And Six Sigma is about having capable processes that deliver minimum defects. And a really good example would be if you're landing aeroplanes at Heathrow, let's say, you want a process that has a very low defect rate, right? Their defect rate needs to be pretty close to zero. Otherwise, you'd have planes crashing every 5 minutes at Heathrow, which would not be good. So they need a process which is Six Sigma competent in order to be very good. So life or death situations, Six Sigma can be very helpful. In other organizations, it's quite easy to have a sort of 1 or 2 or 3 Sigma capable process. But let's just explain what Six Sigma is so that you can at least see what it is. So it was developed in Motorola, 1986, and it's so Sigma is a thing called standard deviation. That might scare you a bit, might go back to your old maths days when you did statistics. And Six Sigma is what's called standard deviation. So if you have a population of measures or outcomes, let's say 1,000 in your measures, if you plot them on a graph in terms of outcomes, then Sigma is the standard deviation. So it's what that means is it's the average amount that each member of that population deviates from what's called the mean. The mean is the average score for each outcome. So it's the average amount each item deviates from the mean. So a process that is Six Sigma competent, as we can see here, statistically means that you will only have 3 defects per million outcomes. So if you're landing planes, obviously 3 per million, even that's too many, but it's very unlikely to get a defect in a system. So that's Six Sigma. And I'm going to show you it graphically. This is a normal distribution or a bell curve. Most things human, for example, are normally distributed. So, for example, if you measured people's heights and you had enough people in a room and you measured their heights, you'd find that some people were particularly tall, 1 or 2 would be less so, but most people would hover around some kind of average in the middle. And if you statistically work out the standard deviation, statistically, 68% of those population would fall 1 standard deviation either side of the mean, statistically. 95% within 2, 99.7% within 3. So you can see we've nearly got everyone already by 3 Sigma, but by the time you get to Six Sigma, there's a very small likelihood that anyone's going to be outside that kind of range. So that's why you get 3 parts per million. Very, very unlikely you get a defect. So that's all Sigma is. And it's used in business in what they call a bit of jargon. Again, jargon busting, statistical process control. It's a way of controlling a process to make sure that we stay within certain bounds, these upper or lower control limits, so that we know we're going to deliver within certain tolerances. And obviously in lean manufacturing, they have to do that. If you're making engines, for example, you have to do them within certain tolerances. If you don't, the engine won't work, or it won't work very well. So we have to maybe tighten our tolerances, and we need statistics to measure those and then to tighten them and make the processes more capable of delivering within those tolerances. So what they often use in manufacturing or other organizations is they use what they call a run chart. So they might measure, don't know, could be productivity over time. It could be how much time you're spending. It could be certain outputs that you're measuring or whatever. And then you can put some upper and lower control limits on it. A good example actually is a thermostat on a heating system. And let's say you want your heating system to work between, don't know, 22 degrees and 18 degrees. Let's say you want it always to be within that range. What happens is, the heating goes down, it gets to 18, the thermostat kicks the heating in, The heating goes up until it gets to 22, and it goes, uh-oh, we're at the upper control limit, turn the heating off, down it goes, and so on. So what you're trying to do is to make sure the heating is constantly between 18 and 22 degrees. And if when you take measures at any stage, if your heating is between 18 and 22, then that's a measure within the upper and lower control limits. And if it's constantly, all your measures are within those tolerances, that means that your system or your thermostat is statistically capable of delivering what you need it to deliver. If it isn't, you better get a better thermostat, essentially. So that's all Six Sigma is. It is standard deviation, but it's used to make sure that all of our outcomes from a process are within the tolerances that we require. And they might be wide tolerances, or they might be really tight tolerances if you have, obviously, things like landing planes. But it depends where you are as to what level of tightness you need in your processes. So that's Six Sigma. It's about process capability. It's about delivering minimum defects in a process. Good luck with it.